This is Jay Arthur. I had a very recent experience with a hospital, and we were trying to figure out what kind of medications were being used in the ICU because some of them caused delirium. And so one of the things we wanted to look at was these ICU sedation medications. Now, in the QIMacros, it would be pretty easy just to select the title and then say I want a Pareto chart of that. And it'll summarize and count the number of times that each one of those medications is dispensed. So lorazepam is the big one, and then propofol. But then my real question became, well, how do we start to tie this to what's the actual dosage that each patient is receiving? And you can kind of see in here that we have the name of the drug, and then it might be in a solution, and this is 4 micrograms in a 100 milliliter bottle, and this is lorazepam, 2 milligrams in a 1 milliliter vial, and 1 milligram tablet, and I don't know what UD stands for. But the idea here is we want to be able to separate this out so we can use a pivot table to summarize all this information. So the strategy here is simply to do something simple. So we're going to take all of this data. This is just a subset of it. And then we can go into data. And Excel has a thing that will convert text to columns. So what we're going to do is say text to columns. We're going to choose delimited because it's delimited by spaces. So this is what the data looks like now. We go to the next one. If we tell it we're going to use a space, so we're going to check that box, then you can see how it splits everything out. It'll treat consecutive spaces as one delimiter. So if there's multiple spaces in there, it just splits them there. And so that's pretty much done. So what it's done is taken this and split out the name of the drug, and then this is actually going to be our dosage. And this is actually going to be the volume it's delivered in and the method it's delivered. Now you can kind of see here we have some things that are a little bit off. So here's our micrograms and this 1,000 milliliters in solution. So I might actually just take this and sort it a little bit. And let's just kind of cut and paste that stuff. Sometimes you have to clean data up to be able to use it. Let me get rid of this thing. And then we have some UDs here, and UD is not going to be very helpful. I'm just going to take that and I'm going to move it over here. So those are the dispensing levels. And in a tablet, there's no volume. So now we have by dose, we have our different drugs, and so on. So what we could do is take this and now turn this into a pivot table. So I could start with the sedation medication, the dosage, and the method it was dispensed, and I could go into QIMacros and choose the pivot table wizard to summarize all of this stuff. And so we have by volume and whatever, the grand total of how things were dispensed. So this would give us one type of view of what the data looks like. So we could do a Pareto chart of that, see mainly vial. And then we can come back over here, and we might want to move some things around now. So instead of the count of doses, we could take our ICU sedation and move it down there and get the method out of there. And then we'd have it by type of drug, the quantity delivered. And we could again do a Pareto chart of that. And here you can see lorazepam is the biggest, and then propofol, and then it slides down from there. But we also might want to know here is, at some point, we'd like to be able to take some of this information, and we have 4 micrograms. Well, we might want to know how much each patient was getting. So we could actually take and do an insert. Let's insert a little space here. And then let's call this milligrams. But we can take this whole column of data, and you can see it's M is like a delimiter, right? So 2 micrograms, 1 microgram, M is like a delimiter. So we could take this and split it out again. Delimited, next. And we separate it by a capital M. And turn off the space. And then we hit finish. And it'll split us out into micrograms, right? And these are actually, the 4s are actually micrograms, so we might actually have to change those down to 0.004. and change this one down here to 0.004. So now we have our everything converted to micrograms. But now we're in a position where we could take this data as well and start to understand exactly how much is being dispensed of each type of medication. So I could go back into the pivot table wizard and it'll sum the dosages. So here's a sum of dosage. And you can see that the vast quantity is really propofol. I'm guessing that's probably in an IV dose. So these are some of the ways we can start to get a picture of how things are being used and by whom. And then if we had each of the patients' names, we could actually tie which patients got what, and then which patients got certain kinds of drugs, and were they more likely to have delirium. And about 40 to something percent of patients in the ICU suffer from delirium caused by one of these sedation drugs. So that's how we go about taking something that looks pretty, there's so much density in here that we can split all of that out into a bigger, better flow so we can see what's really going on in this data and split it all out so that we can understand it and track it and really make sense out of this data and turn it into Pareto charts that tell us what's being used, when is it being used, how often is it being used, and at what volume. That's how you use pivot tables for ICU medications.